The diplomatic station hung in the darkness of space like a silver jewel. It orbited a small moon that belonged to no one. This was neutral ground. This was where enemies could meet without fear. At least that was the theory. Ji-won stood near the observation window and watched the alien ship approach. It was massive, nearly 3 times the size of the human vessel that had brought him here. The metal surface gleamed with patterns that hurt to look at for too long. The ship belonged to the Thermal Empire, and after 200 years of cold silence, they were finally ready to talk. Hyun walked up beside him. The station commander looked tired. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "You ready for this?" he asked. Ji-won nodded slowly. "As ready as anyone can be. Remember the protocols. No sudden movements. Keep your tone neutral. And whatever you do, don't smile too much. Their analysts say it might look aggressive to them." I know. Ji-won had read the briefing materials so many times he could recite them in his sleep. The thermal species valued hierarchy and displays of power. They respected wealth and complexity. They measured worth in resources and technological advancement. Smiling was for creatures of lower intelligence according to their cultural assessment. The alien ship docked with a sound that vibrated through the entire station. Ji-won felt it in his bones. Minutes passed. Then the airlock doors opened. She walked in first. Velsara, the thermal dignitary, stood nearly 7 feet tall. Her body was covered in overlapping plates that shifted colors with the light: blue, purple, silver, gold. Her face was angular and sharp, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. When she moved, her joints clicked softly. Behind her came an entourage of 12 others. They wore elaborate garments woven with threads that glowed. Each one carried devices that hummed with power. They moved in perfect formation, like dancers who had practiced the same routine for years. Velsara's eyes swept across the human delegation. Ji-won felt the weight of that gaze. It was measuring, calculating, finding them wanting. "Humans," she said. Her voice came through a translator device, but Ji-won could hear the original sounds underneath. Clicks and whistles and something that sounded like wind through metal pipes. "We acknowledge your presence." Hyun stepped forward and performed the greeting gesture they had practiced. A bow, but not too deep. "Honored Velsara, we welcome you to this place of peace." "Peace." She repeated the word like it tasted strange. "Yes, that is why we have come." To discuss terms, the ceremony began. Other alien species were present too. The station served as a hub for multiple first contact situations. The Thermal Empire was meeting not just humans, but 5 other species as well. Each one would present a gift. Each one would show their worth. The first species offered a container of rare minerals. The crystals inside glowed with their own light. They were worth enough to buy a small planet. Velsara examined them for exactly 30 seconds. Then she nodded once. "Adequate," she said. The second species presented advanced weapons technology. Designs for ships that could cross galaxies in weeks instead of months. Velsara spent longer on this. 3 minutes. "Interesting," she said. The third species brought genetic templates, the blueprints for creating perfect biological soldiers. Velsara's eyes brightened. 5 minutes of examination. "Useful," she declared. Ji-won watched it all. He saw the pattern. Each gift was more expensive than the last, more complex, more powerful, and each time Velsara seemed slightly less impressed, as if nothing quite reached the standard she expected. The fourth species offered computational matrices that could predict quantum fluctuations. The fifth brought artifacts from a dead civilization that had mastered dimensional travel. The sixth presented living metal that could repair itself and adapt to any environment. To each one, Velsara gave a single word: sufficient, acceptable, worthwhile. But Ji-won saw something else in her eyes. A coldness, a distance. She was going through motions, following a script. There was no real emotion there, no genuine interest, just calculation. Finally, it was humanity's turn. Hyun gestured to Ji-won. This was his moment. His team had prepared for months. They had built something special. A quantum processor that could interface with any known technology. It could translate between systems that had no common ground. It was worth more than the annual budget of some colonies. It represented years of research and billions in development costs. Dayun stood beside the gift, ready to present it. She looked nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the container. This gift would determine humanity's standing. It would show the thermal empire that humans were worth talking to, worth trading with, worth respecting. But Jiwon didn't move toward the gift. Instead, he held up one hand. "Wait," he said quietly. Daeun froze. Hyun's head snapped around. "What are you doing?" The commander hissed. "I need to get something from my quarters," Jiwon said. "I'll be right back." Jiwon, no. We discussed this. We agreed. But Jiwon was already walking away. He heard Daeun's sharp intake of breath, heard the murmurs from the other delegations, heard Hyun calling his name in a voice tight with panic. He didn't stop. He couldn't explain it, not yet. But he had seen something in Velsara's eyes during those presentations. Something that the expensive gifts weren't reaching. A wall, a barrier. She was looking at objects, not connections. At value, not meaning. His quarters were small. A bed, a desk, a few personal items. He went to the drawer beside his bed and pulled out a small cloth bundle. Inside was something he had made during the long journey to the station. Something simple, something that reminded him of home. He held it in his palm. It looked tiny, insignificant, worthless by any measure the thermal empire might use. But it was real. It was personal. It was honest. Jiwon walked back to the ceremony hall. Every eye turned to him. The other delegations looked confused. Hyun looked furious. Daeun looked like she might cry. Velsara watched him approach with those 4 eyes. Unblinking. Waiting. Jiwon stopped in front of her. He held out his hand. "This is humanity's gift," he said. In his palm lay a bracelet. Simple threads woven together in a pattern of blue and green and white, the colors of earth, sky, and oceans. He had made it himself, following a technique his grandmother had taught him when he was 7 years old. It had taken him 3 evenings to complete. It was worth nothing. Nothing at all. The room fell silent. Someone laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound. Jiwon couldn't tell which delegation it came from. Velsara stared at the bracelet. Her 4 eyes focused on it with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. Seconds passed. Then minutes. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even seem to breathe. The silence stretched on and on. Jiwon's arm began to ache from holding it out. But he didn't lower it. He waited. Something was happening. Something important. He could feel it in the stillness. The silence in the ceremony hall felt like a living thing. It pressed against Jiwon's skin, made his heart beat loud in his ears. Still, Velsara did not move. She stared at the bracelet in his outstretched hand, as if it were something from a dream. Behind him, Jiwon heard Daeun whisper urgently to Hyun, "Do something. He's ruined everything. We need to stop this." Hyun's response was too quiet to hear, but Jiwon could imagine it. The commander would be weighing options, trying to calculate damage control, wondering how to salvage a diplomatic mission that seemed to be falling apart. One of the other alien delegations made a chittering sound. Laughter, probably. The human who thought a piece of string could match quantum processors and dimensional artifacts. It was absurd, insulting even. Velsara's entourage began to shift. Their body language suggested confusion. One of them stepped forward, perhaps to intervene, to end this awkward moment and move on to more serious matters. But Velsara raised one of her hands. The movement was small, barely there, but her attendant froze immediately. The entire entourage went still. Jiwon's arm trembled now, not from the weight of the bracelet, but from the tension. He wanted to explain himself, to tell her why he had chosen this. But something told him to wait, to let this moment unfold naturally. Finally, Velsara moved. Her hand reached out slowly. Her fingers, long and delicate despite their armored appearance, touched the bracelet, not taking it, just touching it. Feeling the texture of the threads. "You made this?" Her voice came out different than before. Softer, almost uncertain. "Yes," Jiwon said, "with my own hands." Why? It was a simple question, but the weight behind it felt enormous. Jiwon thought carefully about his answer. "Because," he said, "on Earth we have a tradition. When we want to show someone that we value them, that we want to be friends, we make something personal. We give a piece of ourselves, not just our resources. Velsara's four eyes finally lifted from the bracelet to look at his face. Jiwon met her gaze steadily. He saw something there he hadn't seen before. Something behind the cold calculation. A crack in the wall. "This pattern," she said. "How did you learn it?" "My grandmother taught me, when I was a child." She said her grandmother taught her, and her grandmother before that. It's old, simple, but it carries meaning through generations. Velsara's hand closed around the bracelet. She lifted it from his palm, held it up to the light. The threads caught the glow from the station's overhead panels. Blue like water, green like forests, white like clouds, colors from a world she had never seen. "How long did this take you to create?" she asked. 3 evenings. Maybe 4 hours total." 4 hours. She repeated the words like they were foreign. "You spent 4 hours creating something with no practical function, no technological value, no strategic worth." "I spent 4 hours thinking about this meeting," Jiwon corrected gently. "About what I wanted to say. About what humanity represents. About the kind of relationship we hope to build." Every knot in that bracelet carries those thoughts. Something happened to Velsara's face then. The plates that covered her skin began to shift. Colors rippled across them in patterns Jiwon had never seen in the briefing materials. Purple faded to silver. Silver bloomed into gold. Gold darkened to something deep and rich like sunset. Her legs bent. Slowly, impossibly, she lowered herself. Down and down until her body was horizontal. Her forehead touched the floor. Her hands, still clutching the bracelet, stretched out in front of her. The room erupted. Her entourage surged forward, voices raised in alarm. The other delegations backed away, uncertain if this was aggression or submission. Hyun grabbed Jiwon's arm. "What did you do?" he demanded. "What's happening?" Jiwon couldn't answer. He had no idea. This wasn't in any protocol, wasn't in any briefing material. He stood frozen, watching this powerful alien dignitary prostrate herself before him. Velsara's voice came from the floor, muffled but clear. "You have shown me the old way." "The what?" Jiwon knelt down, trying to see her face. "I don't understand." Her attendants were speaking rapidly in their own language now. The translator devices couldn't keep up, but Jiwon caught fragments. "Impossible. Forbidden. Lost. Ancient." Velsara lifted her head, and Jiwon saw something that stopped his breath. Liquid ran from her eyes, clear and shimmering. Tears. She was crying. "We forgot," she said. Her voice broke on the words. "We forgot everything." One of her attendants, an older member of the species with plates that had dulled to gray, suddenly went still. He stared at the bracelet in Velsara's hands. Then his own eyes began to leak tears. "The weaving," he whispered. "The sacred weaving." More of the entourage began to react. Some fell to their knees. Others simply stood shaking. All of them stared at that simple bracelet as if it held the secrets of the universe. Daeun appeared at Jiwon's side. "What is happening?" she asked. Her panic had transformed into something else. Awe, maybe, or fear. "I don't know," Jiwon admitted. But even as he said it, he felt a growing understanding. Something about this gift had triggered a response deeper than diplomacy. Deeper than politics, it had touched something ancient and buried. Velsara rose slowly. She held the bracelet against her chest. "Will you teach me?" she asked Jiwon. "Will you show me how to make one?" Yes. Of course. Now, please. I must learn now." Hyun stepped forward. "Honored Velsara, perhaps we should reconvene after... now." Her voice was firm. Not cold anymore, but urgent. Desperate. "I have lived 40 cycles. I have commanded fleets. I have negotiated treaties with 60 species. I have mastered technologies you cannot imagine. But I cannot make this simple thing with my own hands, and I must learn. I must." Jiwon looked at Hyun. The commander's face showed complete confusion, but slowly he nodded. "All right, We can arrange a private meeting room. No. Velsera gestured to the ceremony hall. Here, let everyone see. Let them all witness that the Thermal Empire remembers how to create beauty without purpose, how to give without calculation, how to be more than efficient machines. So Jiwan sat on the floor of the diplomatic station's ceremony hall. Velsera sat across from him. Around them, delegations from 7 different species watched in silence. Jiwan pulled out the extra thread he had brought. He began to show her the basic knot. Her hands were clumsy at first. Her fingers, designed for precision instruments and weapon controls, struggled with the soft threads. She dropped the pattern twice, started over 3 times, but she didn't stop trying, and slowly, knot by knot, she began to learn. The other members of her entourage moved closer, watching, learning too. Some of them began to make soft sounds. Music, maybe. Or prayers. Jiwan couldn't tell. An hour passed, then 2. The bracelet Velsera made was crude. The knots were uneven. The pattern wasn't quite right, but when she finished, she held it up like it was made of diamonds. Her tears had dried, but the emotion in her eyes remained. I made this, she said in wonder. With my own hands. Something beautiful and useless and perfect. She slipped it onto her wrist next to Jiwan's bracelet. 2 simple bands of colored thread. And somehow, in that moment, humanity's first contact with the Thermal Empire became something no one had predicted. Something that would change everything. The news spread like fire through space. Within hours, every major civilization had heard about what happened at the diplomatic station. The Thermal Empire's dignitary had prostrated herself before a human. She had wept. She had learned to weave threads with her hands. The powerful empire that had remained cold and distant for 2 centuries had cracked open like an egg. Jiwan sat in his quarters 3 days later, trying to understand it all. His comm device hadn't stopped buzzing. Messages from Earth, from other human colonies, from the media. Everyone wanted to know what he had done, how he had known, what his strategy had been, but there had been no strategy. Just instinct. Just a feeling that expensive gifts weren't the answer. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called. Velsera entered. She moved differently now. Less rigid, more natural. She still wore both bracelets on her wrist. The one he had made and the one she had created herself. They looked worn already, like she had been touching them constantly. I need to tell you a story, she said. About my people. About who we were. Jiwan gestured to the chair across from him. She sat, arranging her long limbs carefully. For a moment, she just looked at the bracelets on her wrist. Then she began to speak. 3,000 cycles ago, my people were different. We lived on a warm world with 3 moons. Our bodies were softer then. We had no armor plating, no advanced technology, but we had art, we had beauty. We created things with our hands that served no purpose except to bring joy. She touched the threads gently. We were master weavers. Every member of our species learned the craft from childhood. We wove clothing and decorations and gifts. We encoded our history into patterns, our emotions into colors. When 2 of my people wanted to bond, they would weave bracelets for each other. Exactly like this, Jiwan listened quietly. Outside his window, stars moved slowly past. But then we discovered efficiency, Velsera continued. Her voice grew harder. We learned that machines could weave faster, better, more consistently. We learned that time spent creating art was time not spent advancing. We learned that emotions made us weak, that beauty without function was waste. So you stopped, Jiwan said softly. We stopped. Within 500 cycles, the old ways were gone. We optimized everything, our bodies, our minds, our society. We became the Thermal Empire, powerful, efficient, cold. She looked up at him. We thought we were evolving, becoming better, but we were just becoming less. What happened when I gave you the bracelet? Genetic memory. Velsera tapped the side of her head. My species stores ancestral experiences in our DNA. Most of it is suppressed, locked away, but sometimes a trigger can release it. Your gift was that trigger. When I touched those woven threads, 3,000 cycles of memory came flooding back. She closed her eyes. I remembered weavers who lived before my great-grandmother was born. I felt their joy in creation, their love of beauty, their belief that making something with your own hands was sacred. And I realized what we had lost, what we had deliberately thrown away in pursuit of power. That's why you cried. I cried because I understood in that moment that my entire life had been empty. I have commanded ships that could destroy planets. I have negotiated treaties worth more resources than you can imagine. I have been respected and feared across 40 systems. But I had never made anything beautiful. I had never created something just because I wanted it to exist. Jiwan felt a tightness in his chest. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause you pain. No. Velsara's eyes opened. They were fierce. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could give. You gave me back my soul. Over the next week, something extraordinary happened. Velsara sent a message to her home world. A simple video of her wearing the bracelets and explaining what had happened. She didn't order anyone to do anything. Didn't mandate change. She just shared her experience. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thermal citizens across 100 worlds began searching their own genetic memories. Many had the same experience Velsara had. The memories came flooding back. The weaving, the art, the joy of creation. An old thermal historian named Elder Korveth sent a transmission to the diplomatic station. He requested permission to visit. When he arrived, he looked ancient. His armor plates were cracked and faded, but his eyes burned with purpose. I have spent my life studying our past, he told Velsara and Jiwan. I knew we had lost something. I found fragments in old archives, references to the weaving, but I thought it was just history, dead and gone. I never imagined it could come back. He pulled out a data device and projected images into the air. They showed ancient thermal cities. Instead of the cold metal structures of the modern empire, these were organic and flowing. Buildings woven from living materials, streets decorated with patterns of stunning complexity, people wearing clothes that rippled with color and meaning. This was us, Korveth said. His voice trembled. This was who we were before we chose efficiency over beauty. More images appeared. Thermal couples exchanging woven bracelets. Families creating tapestries together. Children learning patterns from their elders. A civilization built on art and connection and joy. What changed? Jiwan asked. War, Korveth said simply. We were invaded by a species that valued only power. We were gentle, creative, unprepared. We lost billions. So we decided to become like our enemies. To optimize for survival. To make ourselves hard and cold and efficient. We won the war. But we lost ourselves. Velsara stared at the images. Tears ran freely down her face now. She made no attempt to hide them. Can we go back? She whispered. Is it possible? I don't know, Korveth admitted. We have changed so much. Our bodies are different. Our minds think differently. The weaving may be too difficult for us now. No. Velsara held up her crude bracelet. Look, I made this. My hands are clumsy. My fingers are armored, but I made it. If I can do it, others can too. She turned to Jiwan. Will you help us? Will you teach my people what you taught me? Jiwan thought about his grandmother. About the patience she had shown when teaching him. About how she had said that weaving was about more than just making bracelets. It was about connecting generations. About passing on something precious and fragile and human. Yes, he said. I'll help. Within days, thermal citizens began arriving at the station. Dozens at first, then hundreds. They came to learn the simple human craft of weaving friendship bracelets. Jiwan taught as many as he could. Doan and other humans volunteered to help. They set up classes in every available room. The thermal people struggled. Their hands were not made for this kind of delicate work anymore. They dropped threads, tangled patterns, made mistakes over and over, but they didn't give up. They worked with a determination that was almost desperate, as if they were reclaiming something stolen. One young thermal female named Mira spent 6 hours trying to complete a single bracelet. When she finally succeeded, she held it up and laughed. It was the first time Jiwan had heard one of them laugh. The sound was like bells ringing. I made beauty, she said in wonder. I made something that serves no purpose except to exist. And it's perfect. But not everyone was happy about the change. Deep in the thermal empire, some saw this cultural awakening as a threat. They believed efficiency had made them strong, that emotions were weakness, that returning to the old ways would destroy everything they had built, and they began to plan. 2 months after the first bracelet, the thermal homeworld looked different. From space, the changes were subtle, But on the ground, a revolution was blooming. Citizens hung woven decorations from buildings. Market stalls appeared selling handmade crafts. People gathered in public squares to teach each other forgotten techniques. Ji-won watched it all through video feeds with growing amazement. What had started with a simple gift had become a cultural rebirth. The thermal people were remembering who they used to be, and they were hungry for more. Minho arrived at the station to study the phenomenon. The xenoanthropologist was young and enthusiastic, with quick movements and bright eyes. He set up equipment in a converted storage room and began analyzing everything. "This shouldn't be possible," he said to Ji-won one evening. They sat together watching footage of a thermal weaving circle. 20 individuals working on a massive tapestry together. Cultural change usually takes generations. This is happening in weeks. "The genetic memory," Ji-won said. "It's not just information. It's feeling, emotion. When they access it, they experience their ancestors' joy directly. But look at this." Minho pulled up anatomical scans of thermal hands. Their fingers evolved for precision tool use. The joints are reinforced. The nerve endings are optimized for technology interfaces. Weaving should be nearly impossible for them now. But they're doing it anyway. On the screen, a thermal elder guided a child through making a simple knot. The child's hands shook with effort. The elder's hands were steady but slow. Together they completed the pattern. Both of them smiled. Actual genuine smiles. "They're adapting," Minho said quietly. "Their bodies are changing back. I'm seeing increased flexibility in finger joints. New nerve pathway formation. It's like their biology is trying to reverse 3,000 years of evolution." Ji-won thought about that. Maybe evolution isn't just about surviving. Maybe it's also about becoming what you need to be. Velsara spent most of her time now traveling between worlds, teaching, encouraging, showing her people that change was possible. She wore her original bracelet always, along with a collection of new ones. Each was slightly better than the last. Her skill was improving, but Ji-won noticed she looked tired. The joy in her eyes had dimmed. Something was wrong. She confirmed it during a private meeting. "There is resistance," she said. "Strong resistance. Many believe we are becoming weak, that we're abandoning what made us powerful. Who leads this resistance? Commander Thex, he controls much of our military. He believes emotions are a disease. That art is a distraction. He says I have been compromised by human influence." She looked down at her bracelets. "He may be right. You don't believe that. I don't know what I believe anymore." Her voice was small, uncertain. "I feel things now I never felt before. Joy, but also fear, doubt, guilt. Before, everything was simple, clear. Now everything is complicated." Ji-won leaned forward. "That's not weakness. That's life, real life. The kind your ancestors had before they locked it away. But what if Thex is right? What if these feelings make us vulnerable? What if another species attacks us while we're distracted by making art? Then you'll defend yourselves. But you'll be defending something worth protecting, not just territory or resources. You'll be defending your ability to feel and create and be more than machines." Velsara touched her bracelets again. It was becoming a habit, a gesture of comfort. "I hope you're right." Elder Korveth continued his research, digging deeper into thermal history. He found more than just records of weaving. He found music, poetry, dance, an entire culture of artistic expression that had been systematically erased. He shared his findings in a presentation to the Thermal Council. Ji-won watched via transmission. The council members sat in a vast chamber, their faces expressionless. But as Korveth showed them image after image of their ancestors creating beauty, something shifted in the room. One council member, a female named Dira, suddenly stood. "I remember this," she said. Her voice shook. "I remember a song. My ancestors sang it while weaving. I can hear it in my mind," she began to sing. The sound was haunting, beautiful, alien but somehow familiar. Other council members closed their eyes. Some began to weep. "We threw away everything," Dira said when the song ended. "We became monsters pretending to be evolved." But not everyone was moved. A male council member named Rax remained cold. "This is sentiment," he said. "Useless nostalgia. We are what we are. Powerful, efficient. Trying to go backwards will only weaken us." "We are empty," Dira countered. "We have power but no purpose. Resources but no meaning. The humans showed us what we lost. We must reclaim it. The debate raged for hours. The council split almost evenly. Half wanted to continue the cultural awakening. Half wanted to suppress it before it went too far. In the end, they agreed to let the people choose. Each thermal citizen would decide for themselves whether to embrace the old ways or maintain the new efficiency. The choice seemed simple, but Jiwon knew it was anything but. He spent time teaching more classes. Vilzara had requested he focus on training instructors, thermal people who could carry the knowledge to other worlds. One of these instructors was named Hana. She was younger than Velsara, with armor plates still bright with youth. "Why do humans still do this?" Hana asked during a lesson. "You have advanced technology, machines that could weave better than any hand. Why do you still make things yourselves?" Jiwon thought carefully about his answer. Because the imperfection is part of the beauty. When you make something with your own hands, it carries your unique touch, your personality, your care. A machine can make a perfect bracelet, but it can't make one that means something. Hana looked at her work. The bracelet she was making had uneven knots. The colors weren't quite balanced, but she had chosen each thread carefully, had worked on it for hours, had poured her attention and hope into every loop. "It's not perfect," she said, "but it's mine." Exactly. More thermal citizens were having similar realizations. They created things that were flawed and beautiful. They made gifts for each other that had no value except emotional meaning. They spent time on activities that didn't advance their careers or increase their efficiency. And they started to smile, to laugh, to cry, to feel. The change was spreading through their entire civilization. But like a wave, it was also building resistance. Commander Thex gathered those who opposed the awakening. Military leaders, industrial managers, politicians who valued power over beauty. "They are making us weak," Thex said in a recorded message that leaked to the public. "This human has infected our dignitary with sentiment. Now she spreads it like a disease. We must stop this before it destroys everything we've built." Velsara watched the message with Jiwon beside her. Her face was unreadable, but her hands holding her bracelets trembled slightly. "He's going to move against us," she said quietly. "Soon, I can feel it. What will you do?" She looked at the bracelets, at the crude, imperfect, beautiful work of her own hands, at the symbol of everything she had become, everything she had remembered. "I will not go back," she said. Her voice was soft but absolutely certain. "I will not return to being cold and empty. Whatever happens, whatever it costs, I will not forget again." 3 days later, Commander Thex made his move. It was swift and brutal and almost perfectly executed. His forces took control of key government buildings, arrested supporters of the cultural awakening, declared martial law on 6 major worlds, and he took Jiwon hostage, the human who had started it all, the one whose simple gift had cracked open their empire. Thex wanted him as leverage, as proof that Velsara had been compromised by alien influence, but he miscalculated. He thought Velsara would back down to save the human. He thought she would choose Jiwon's life over her principles. He didn't understand that she had already made her choice. She had chosen to feel, to care, to be more than efficient, and once you make that choice, there's no going back. Jiwon woke to darkness. His head throbbed. The last thing he remembered was walking back to his quarters after a teaching session. Then a sharp pain at the base of his skull. Now this. Wherever this was, his eyes adjusted slowly. He was in a cell, small metal walls, a single light source high above. His hands were bound behind him. When he tried to move, pain shot through his shoulders. Footsteps approached. The door opened. A thermal soldier entered. Then another. Then Commander Thex himself. Thex was larger than most thermal individuals. His armor plates were dark, almost black. His 4 eyes were cold as space. He looked at Jiwon like one might look at an interesting specimen. "The human," Thex said. "The one who broke our empire with a piece of string." Jiwon said nothing. His training had covered hostage situations. "Stay calm, don't provoke. Wait for opportunities, you must be very proud," Thex continued. "In just a few months, you've turned us into weak, emotional children. Citizens waste time making useless decorations. Soldiers cry over colored threads. Our productivity has dropped by 40%. All because of you." "I didn't do anything," Jiwon said quietly. "I gave a gift. What your people did with it was their choice." Thex moved faster than Jiwon expected. One moment he was across the room. The next his hand was around Jiwon's throat. Not quite choking, just holding, A reminder of power. You manipulated us, used our genetic memories as a weapon, turned Velsera into a traitor. This was a calculated attack disguised as friendship. No. Jiwan forced the word out. It was just kindness. Something you don't understand. Thex released him. I understand efficiency, power, survival. Your kindness is poison. It makes us vulnerable, weak, unable to defend ourselves. Defend against what? You've been at peace for 200 years. Peace built on strength, on respect through fear. Your gift has undermined that. Now other species see us weaving bracelets and laughing. They think we're soft. Some are already testing our borders, probing our defenses. Soon they'll attack. And when they do, it will be your fault. Jiwan met Thex's eyes. Or maybe they'll see you as something more than just a military threat. Maybe they'll see you as people worth talking to, worth trading with, worth befriending. Friends are liabilities, Thex said. Allies betray you when it's convenient. The only security is power. The only safety is strength. Velsera has forgotten this. She must be reminded. He pulled out a communication device. I'm broadcasting this to her now. She'll watch me question you. She'll see what happens to humans who interfere with our civilization, and she'll have a choice. Renounce this cultural awakening. Order our people to return to their duties. Or watch you die. Jiwan's heart hammered, but he kept his voice steady. She won't do it, she will. She's become emotional, sentimental, she cares about you. That caring is a weakness I will exploit. The broadcast began. Thex positioned the device so it captured both of them. Jiwan could see himself on the small screen. Bound. Helpless. Exactly the image Thex wanted to project. Velsera, Thex said to the camera. You see what I have? The human who poisoned you. I will give you 12 hours to comply with my demands. Return our people to rational thought. End this artistic madness. Resume efficient operations. If you refuse, the human dies, and I will begin arresting others. Every thermal citizen who wastes time on weaving. Every instructor spreading this disease. Choose wisely. The broadcast ended. Thex left, the guards remained. Jiwan sat in silence, his mind racing. 12 hours. What could happen in 12 hours? He didn't have to wonder long. 3 hours later, the entire station shook. Not from weapons, from ships, hundreds of them. Thermal vessels surrounded the military facility where Jiwan was held. But these weren't military ships. They were civilian transports. Personal craft. Even old cargo haulers. Velsera's voice broadcast over every speaker. Commander Thex, I will not comply with your demands. I will not order my people to forget what they've remembered. I will not return to being empty and cold. Release the human. Surrender your forces, or face the consequences. Thex appeared in Jiwan's cell minutes later. His face showed something new, uncertainty. She's bluffing. Those are civilian ships, unarmed. But through the cell's small window, Jiwan could see the ships, and he saw something that made him smile. Each one displayed woven patterns on their hulls. Bright colors, artistic designs, symbols of the cultural awakening. They're not bluffing, Jiwan said. They're showing you what they've chosen. And they've chosen to be more than you want them to be. More ships arrived. Thousands of them. They formed a sphere around the military station. Not attacking. Just present. Bearing witness, Velsera's voice came again. You see them, Thex? Those are our people. Not soldiers following orders. Not mindless workers serving the Empire. People. Feeling, thinking, creating people. They've come here because they want to. Because they believe in something more than efficiency. You can kill the human. You can arrest the instructors. But you cannot arrest an entire civilization. Thex's hands clenched. They are fools. When other species attack, these artistic weaklings will die first. Then we will die creating beauty instead of living as machines, Velsera said. Now release the human. Last chance. Thex grabbed Jiwan, dragged him to the central command room, forced him to kneel before the main view screen. Velsera's face appeared there. She stood on the bridge of a ship. Behind her, Jiwan could see Elder Corveth Hanadira from the council. All wearing bracelets. All standing firm. You think you can stop me? Thex demanded. I have weapons, shields, military training. What do you have? Colored threads? Velsera's expression was calm. Sad even. I have something you lost, Thex. I have purpose. I have meaning. I have felt joy and love and connection. And now that I have felt these things, I would rather die than return to emptiness. So die. Thex raised a weapon toward Jiwan's head. But before he could fire, the guards in the room moved. Not toward Velsara's ships. Toward Thex. Their weapons pointed at their commander. "Sir," one of them said quietly, "we cannot follow this order." Thex spun. "What?" The guards' hands trembled. But they held steady. "My daughter made me a bracelet, sir. It's crude. The colors don't match well, but she spent 3 hours on it. She gave it to me and said she loved me." I had never heard her say that before. Never heard any emotion in her voice. And I realized I had never told her I loved her either. The guard's voice cracked. "I will not return to that silence, sir. I will not forget how to feel. So I cannot kill the human who reminded us how." Other guards spoke up. "My son learned to sing an old song. My partner and I wove something together for the first time. I made my mother cry with happiness." One by one, every guard in the room lowered their weapons. Not in surrender. In choice, Thex stood alone. His weapon still pointed at Jiwan, his hand shaking now. "You're all compromised, infected, weak." "No," Velsara said from the screen. "We're alive." Finally, after 3,000 years of pretending to be something we're not, we're alive again. Thex's weapon lowered slowly. He looked at his guards, at the ships outside, at Velsara's face on the screen, at Jiwan kneeling before him. "I don't understand," he said. His voice was small, lost. "We were strong. We were powerful. Why would you throw that away?" "We didn't throw it away," Velsara said gently. "We added to it. Strength without purpose is just violence. Power without meaning is just control. We can be strong and artistic, efficient and emotional. We can be everything. I don't know how to be those things," Thex admitted. "Then learn, like we're all learning. Start with something simple." Velsara held up her wrist, showing her collection of bracelets. "Start with a gift." Thex stood in silence for a long moment. Then slowly he released Jiwan. The weapon clattered to the floor. His guards moved forward, not to arrest him, but to steady him as he collapsed to his knees. "I don't remember how," Thex whispered. "I don't remember how to feel." "The memories are there," Velsara said. "In your DNA, in your ancestors' experiences. You just have to let them in." And then something beautiful happened. One of the guards, the one who had spoken first, removed their bracelet, walked to Thex, placed it on the commander's wrist. "Start with this," the guard said. "My daughter made it, but I think she would want you to have it, as a beginning." Thex stared at the crude, colorful threads on his wrist. His 4 eyes leaked tears. His entire body shook, and then he wept, great heaving sobs, 3,000 years of suppressed emotion pouring out. The guards didn't mock him. They surrounded him, supporting him, letting him feel. Jiwan watched it all with tears in his own eyes. This wasn't what he had expected. Wasn't what anyone had expected. A revolution won not with weapons but with art, with feeling, with the simple act of remembering how to be human, or in this case, how to be thermal. The aftermath of the standoff spread across the galaxy like ripples in water. News networks broadcast footage of Commander Thex weeping while holding a simple bracelet. Analysis programs tried to explain what had happened. Political experts debated the implications. And everyone asked the same question: what did humanity do? G1 returned to the diplomatic station to find it transformed. Representatives from dozens of species had arrived. They filled the halls, crowded the observation decks, all wanting answers, all suspicious. Hyun met him at the airlock. The commander looked older than before, more tired. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Just one?" Ji-won tried to joke, but Hyun didn't smile. "Earth government sent someone, Yoonji. She's a senior investigator. Her job is to find out if you are operating under orders. If this was a planned operation to destabilize the thermal empire." "It wasn't. I just gave a gift." "I know that. You know that. But does anyone else believe it?" Hyun gestured to the crowded station. "Half these species think we've developed some kind of psychological weapon. The other half think we're running the most sophisticated manipulation campaign in galactic history. Either way, they're scared of us." Ji-won hadn't considered that. He had been focused on the thermal people, on their awakening, on helping them remember beauty. He hadn't thought about how it would look to outside observers. Yoonji was waiting in a conference room. She was older, maybe 50, with gray streaking her black hair. Her eyes were sharp, measuring. She gestured for Ji-won to sit. Tell me everything, she said, from the beginning. Why did you give that gift? So Ji-won told the story. Again. He had told it many times now, but each time he tried to make it clear. There was no strategy, no hidden agenda, just a moment of intuition, a feeling that expensive gifts were missing something important. Yoonji listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Do you know how this looks? From the outside?" Hyun mentioned it. The Thermal Empire was one of the most powerful civilizations in this sector. Cold, calculating, militaristic. In 3 months, you turned them into artists and poets. You caused their military commander to weep and surrender without firing a shot. You fundamentally altered their entire culture, and you claim it was an accident. It was. Ji-won, if this was intentional, it would be the most brilliant military strategy in history. Winning a war without fighting. Defeating an enemy by making them your friend. Other species are terrified of what humanity might do to them next. But we didn't do anything. I gave a bracelet. The thermal people chose what to do with it, did they? Yoonji leaned forward. Or did you trigger something in their psychology? Exploit a weakness in their genetic memory? Did you know what would happen? No, I didn't know. I couldn't have known. A new voice spoke from the doorway. He's telling the truth. Dr. Tae-woo entered. The human psychologist had been studying the thermal awakening from the beginning. He carried a datapad filled with research. May I? He asked Yoonji. She nodded. He activated a holographic display. I've analyzed the thermal response pattern, Tae-woo said. What happened wasn't manipulation. It was recognition. They saw something in Ji-won's gift that they had lost. Something their ancestors valued. The response was organic, natural. Human beings didn't make this happen. We just reminded them of what they used to be. But why did it work? Yoonji asked. Why was a simple bracelet so powerful? Tae-woo smiled. Because it was authentic. Because Ji-won actually made it. With care, with thought, with meaning. That authenticity is what triggered the genetic memory. A calculated gift, even if identical, wouldn't have had the same effect. He pulled up comparative data. Look at this. Other species presented expensive, impressive gifts. But they were impersonal, purchased or manufactured. They had value but no soul. Ji-won's gift had soul. That's the difference. Yoonji studied the data. So humanity's advantage is what? Being genuine? Not exactly. Tae-woo's expression grew more serious. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you made something with your own hands? Just for the joy of creating it? Yoonji frowned. I knit sometimes when I have time. Exactly. You knit. And millions of other humans do similar things. We garden even though we can synthesize food. We paint even though cameras capture images perfectly. We write by hand even though we have voice transcription. We cook even though we have meal dispensers. Why? Because it feels good? Yoonji said slowly. Because we never optimized it away. Tae-woo gestured to the station around them. Every other advanced species followed a similar path. They discovered technology. They automated production. They eliminated inefficiency. And in doing so, they eliminated personal creation. Humans did that too, but we never finished. We kept the old ways alongside the new. He pulled up more data, cultural practices across dozens of species. The thermal wove art into their society, then stopped. The Krell composed music, then automated it. The Ven created living sculptures, then let machines do it. Every advanced civilization we've encountered has the same pattern. Except us. Why? Yoonji asked. Why didn't we eliminate these practices? Because they're inefficient, Tae-woo said simply. And humans are okay with that. We value experiences over optimal outcomes. We choose the scenic route even when there's a faster way. We make things by hand even when machines could do it better. It's not that we're less advanced. We just never saw efficiency as the only goal. Ji-won listened to this with growing understanding. He thought about his grandmother teaching him to weave. About the hours spent making something simple that could be bought for cheap. About why he still did it even now. It's not a secret weapon, he said quietly. It's just who we are. Yoonji sat back. But other species don't know that. They see what you did to the thermal empire. They're asking what humanity might do to them. They're scared. Then we need to show them, Tae-woo said. Not tell them. Show them. Over the next week, human delegations across the galaxy began a new kind of diplomacy. Instead of presenting technological marvels or military might, they offered something simpler. They invited alien representatives to Earth, to human colonies, to see how humans actually lived. Jiwon participated in several of these visits. He watched alien dignitaries walk through human cities and marvel at things that seemed ordinary to him. Street musicians playing for tips, artists selling paintings in parks, children building sandcastles on beaches, elderly people tending gardens, amateur chefs sharing recipes. One representative from the Krell, a species of crystalline beings, stopped before a human painting. It showed a sunset over mountains, simple, not even particularly skilled. The artist was just a hobbyist. Why does this exist? The Krell asked. You have cameras that capture perfect images. Why paint? The human artist, an older woman named Yuna, smiled. Because I wanted to. Because I saw that sunset and felt something. And I wanted to try to capture that feeling. Not just the image. But it's imperfect. The colors are not accurate. The proportions are wrong. Yes, Yuna agreed. But it's mine. I made it. And that matters to me more than perfection. The Krell stood silent for a long time. Then something remarkable happened. Light patterns rippled through their crystalline body. Colors Jiwon had never seen a Krell display before. We used to do this, the Krell said softly. We would grow crystal formations as art, each one unique to its creator. We stopped when we learned to manufacture perfect crystals. We thought we were advancing, but we were just becoming less. More species had similar reactions. They saw humans being inefficient and happy, creating things imperfectly and feeling fulfilled, wasting time on hobbies and calling it living. And they remembered that they used to do the same. A galactic conference was called. Representatives from 40 species gathered. The topic, what humanity had accidentally revealed. That efficiency wasn't everything. That optimization had cost. That becoming advanced didn't require losing joy. Velsera spoke at the conference. She wore her collection of bracelets proudly now. Humanity didn't weaponize anything, she said. They simply stayed whole while the rest of us became fragments. They kept their art and science together, their efficiency and their joy, their power and their beauty. They showed us what we had lost, and for that, we should thank them. But some species weren't ready to hear it. A representative from the Korthan collective stood. You call it staying whole. I call it remaining primitive. Humanity advances slowly because they waste resources on useless activities. While they paint and sing and weave, we grow stronger, more capable, more prepared for what's coming. What is coming? Velsara asked. Competition, conflict, the universe is not kind. Only the efficient survive. No, Velsara said. Only the whole survive. Efficient machines break. Optimized systems fail, but beings with purpose, with meaning, with joy in their existence, they endure because they have something worth enduring for. The debate continued, but slowly the tone shifted. More species began to share their own stories. Art they used to create, music they used to compose, traditions they had abandoned. And many of them asked the same question. Could they go back? Could they remember? Jiwon watched it all from the observation deck. Humanity hadn't intended to start a revolution. They had just never stopped being human. And somehow that was enough. 6 months had passed since Jiwon first gave Velsara that simple bracelet. The diplomatic station looked completely different now. Where there had once been sterile metal corridors, colorful decorations now hung from every surface. Woven tapestries, painted murals, sculptures made from salvaged materials. The station had become a living gallery of galactic art. Jiwon walked through the main hall and marveled at the change. Representatives from 20 different species worked together on a massive collaborative piece. A thermal elder showed a young Krell how to weave crystal strands into fabric. A human taught a Korthan the basics of watercolor painting. A Ven sculptor helped a thermal citizen shape living metal into artistic forms. The noise was different too. Once the station had been quiet, efficient. Now it hummed with voices, laughter, music, the sounds of creation. Velsara found him near the observation window. She wore her original bracelet still, though it was faded and worn now. Beside it were dozens of others. Gifts from people she had taught. Each one unique. Each one precious. Hard to believe it's only been 6 months, she said, standing beside him. Feels like longer, Jiwon agreed. The council wants to make this permanent. Transform the station into a cultural center, a place where species can come to learn from each other. Not just technology or trade agreements, but art, music, creation. What about the resistance? The people who think this is making you weak? Velsara's expression turned thoughtful. They still exist, Commander Thex included, but something changed after his breakdown. He didn't become an artist overnight. He still values efficiency and strength, but now he understands they're not the only values. He's learning balance, she paused. Last week he completed his first bracelet. It took him 40 hours. The pattern is crude, but when he finished, he gave it to the guard who had first shown him kindness. And he cried again, not from pain this time, from joy. Jiwon smiled. That's progress. It is. But it's also complicated. Some of our military leaders still struggle with this new way. They see emotions as tactical weaknesses. Art has wasted resources. We've had to prove we can be both strong and feeling. And have you? 3 weeks ago, a border dispute arose with the Korthan Collective. They tested our defenses, expecting us to be soft, vulnerable. Velsara's eyes hardened. We weren't. Our forces responded with precision and strength. But afterward, instead of threatening retaliation, we invited their warriors to a weaving circle. How did they respond? They were confused at first, thought it was a trick, but their commander came. And she learned to make a bracelet. And while her hands worked the threads, we talked about why borders mattered, about what we each feared, about what we each needed. Velsara smiled. We reached an agreement that satisfied both sides. No shots fired, no threats made, just honest conversation while creating something beautiful. More species arrived daily now. Word had spread across the galaxy about the thermal awakening, about humanity's role in it, about the station that taught art alongside politics. Delegations came curious, some skeptical. Many desperate, a pair of Ven representatives approached Jiwon one afternoon. Their species had abandoned sculpture centuries ago, but now they wanted to learn again. We saw what your gift did for the thermal people, one of them said. Can you help us remember too? Jiwon spent the day with them, not teaching weaving this time, but helping them work with clay. The Ven had once been master sculptors. Their appendages were perfect for shaping soft materials, but they had forgotten the joy of it, forgotten the meditation of creation. As they worked, one of the Ven began to weep. I remember now, she said. My ancestor, 500 generations ago, she made sculptures for her community. Each one told a story. Each one carried meaning. I can feel her pride, her love for the work. We threw this away. Why did we throw this away? Because you thought you were evolving, Jiwon said gently, becoming better. But sometimes evolution means going forward. Sometimes it means going back to reclaim what you lost. More species came with similar stories. The Krell wanted to grow artistic crystals again. The Dreen wanted to relearn their ancient forms of music. The Horvan wanted to rediscover their traditional pottery. Each species had abandoned something precious in their pursuit of advancement. Each one wanted it back. Jiwon couldn't teach them all. Neither could Velsara or the other thermal instructors. So they trained more teachers, created programs, developed systems for sharing knowledge across species. The station became a hub of cultural exchange unlike anything the galaxy had seen. But it wasn't just about art. Something deeper was happening. As species relearned how to create, they also relearned how to feel, to connect, to empathize. Diplomatic disputes that would have led to war were now resolved through dialogue. Trade agreements included cultural exchanges. Military alliances transformed into friendships. One evening, Jiwon received a package from Earth. His grandmother had sent him something. He opened it in his quarters, his hands trembling slightly. Inside was a bracelet, but not like the one he had made for Velsara. This one was ancient. The threads were faded, the knots worn. A note accompanied it. Jiwon, this bracelet was made by my grandmother when she was young. She gave it to me before she died. I wore it for 70 years. Now I'm giving it to you, not because you need it, but because what you've done deserves to be honored. You reminded an entire galaxy that being advanced doesn't mean being empty. That's worth more than all the technology in the universe. I'm proud of you. Love, grandmother. Jiwon held the bracelet and wept. He thought about the chain of connection it represented. His grandmother's grandmother, his grandmother, him, Velsara, the thermal people, all the species now remembering how to create, all connected by simple threads and genuine care. He wore the bracelet the next day when he taught a class. 50 beings from 12 different species attended. They sat in a circle learning to weave. Some had hands, some had tentacles, some had crystalline appendages that weren't designed for delicate work. But all of them tried. All of them persisted. A young thermal named Bora struggled with her bracelet. She had started over 5 times. Her hands shook with frustration. "I can't do it," she said. "I'm not good at this." "That's okay," Jiwan said. "It's not about being good. It's about doing it. About trying. About creating something that's uniquely yours. But it's ugly. The colors clash. The pattern is wrong. Let me tell you something my grandmother told me. She said that perfection is boring. That flaws are what make something interesting. That mistakes are where personality lives." He held up his own bracelet. "See this? I made it when I was 7. It's terrible, but I wore it for 20 years. Because it's mine. Because it reminds me of learning. Of growing. Of being human." Bora looked at her crude work. Slowly she smiled. "It is ugly. But it's my ugly." "Exactly," the class continued. At the end, everyone held up what they had made. Some were beautiful. Some were disasters. All of them were precious. They exchanged bracelets with each other. Gifts between species. Symbols of connection. Velsara appeared at the end of class. She had news. "The Galactic Council has approved our proposal. The station will become permanent. A cultural center for all species. And they want you to lead it," Jiwan blinked. "Me? You started this. You showed us the way. Who better to guide others? I'm not qualified. I'm just a cultural ambassador. I make bracelets." "That's exactly why you're qualified." Velsara placed her hand on his shoulder. "You understand what matters. Not technology or power or resources. Connection, meaning, joy. That's what this place will teach, and you're the perfect person to lead it." Jiwan thought about it. About his grandmother's bracelet on his wrist. About the chain of connection stretching back through time. About the future he could help build. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." The cultural center grew rapidly. Within a year, it housed permanent representatives from 40 species. Within 2 years, that number doubled. Classes ran constantly. Art exhibitions rotated weekly. Concerts happened daily. The station became a living celebration of galactic diversity and creativity. But the real change happened in the hearts of those who visited. They arrived as ambassadors and politicians and scientists. They left as artists and creators and friends. They took that change back to their home worlds. Started their own programs. Taught their own people. The revolution spread like light through the darkness. Humanity's role in all this became legendary. They were the species that never forgot. The ones who kept art alive alongside science. Who valued beauty as much as efficiency. Other species studied human culture, trying to understand how they had managed it. But there was no secret. No hidden strategy. Just a choice made millions of times by billions of individuals. The choice to create, to feel. To be more than just functional. 5 years after giving that first bracelet, Jiwan stood in the station's main gallery. A new exhibit was opening. Velsara had created a massive tapestry depicting the story of the awakening. It showed her receiving the bracelet. Her tears, the spreading change, the transformation of their civilization. The tapestry had taken her 2 years to complete. Every thread placed by her own hands. Every color chosen with care. At the center of the tapestry, she had woven the original bracelet Jiwan had given her. It was falling apart now.